This channel is becoming an official Percy Stan account. You have been warned. Hi guys, my name is Shelly. I am a lover of all things books, mainly fantasy, but I do stray every now and then. And I have just finished reading the Percy Jackson series for the first time in my life. Yes, I am 20 something years old. I'm not telling you the whole age. And I have only just read Percy Jackson. And oh my days, was my mind blown away. Stay tuned for my review of the very first book of the Percy Jackson series, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. Dumb, you entitled brat. Terror. Get it together. I don't believe anything. Okay, so guys, don't get it twisted. It's not that I've intentionally avoided reading Percy Jackson my entire life. I started reading at a very, very old age, I guess you could say. Not really old, no, but I just didn't read when I was younger. I only started reading when I was in A levels, and then obviously A levels was really, really hard, so that was a short-lived experience. And then when I got to university, I picked it up right after my foundation year, and so I was just like, oh wow, reading is actually fun. And then I really got into reading, and I started with YA and graduated to new adult, and then graduated to kind of full adult, and I've just been bouncing between YA and adult books. And so middle grade books never really had a chance, and I've only just started to give middle grade a chance, and I've been reading a lot of fun middle grade. And if I'm reading middle grade fantasy, like, why not actually give the book that brought so much life to so many readers when they were in the middle grade, when they were in that era? Why not give those books a chance? And so of course I picked up the Percy Jackson series, and I am so shocked that I did not get to live this experience as like a tween and a teen. You guys who read this when you were younger, you guys really had an experience, and I'm kind of jealous, but I'm I'm so happy that I definitely gave this a chance. This book was everything in a bag of chips. It just made my holiday for me, because I did choose this and two others to read while I went on my birthday holiday, and I was so happy. First of all, I read the first book in one night. Like, I'm not joking. And not even one night. I read it in a few hours, and then I picked up the second book immediately. And I would have finished that book that night as well. But like I said, I was on holiday. I had sites to see that I had planned to see. And though I did consider just canceling the entire holiday, staying in my hotel and reading, I made the decision to actually go out because I paid for that holiday, and I was not going to let that money go to waste. But let me give you the review of me, like a 20 something year old adult reading Percy Jackson for the first time, because a lot of people wonder, do middle grade books translate well to adults? And let me tell you, if middle grade books, if all of them are like this, then heck yes. I have read some middle grade books so far this year, and I would say the same for those as well, because I love them and I've been reading sequels. But Percy Jackson, it's one of those. It was so, by the very first line, it had me hooked. Percy is so witty, and he's so lovable from the very jump. Like, I adored his character from the very jump. For being like a 12-year-old and having such quick wit, I appreciate all characters with wit. Whether you're, in a YA book or an adult book, I need you to have quick wit, because I'm just like that. When you're with your friends, it's going to provide banter, and when you're with your enemies, it's really just going to provide even more banter, especially considering they're an enemy, and it's really just going to have us rooting for you more, simply because we're just like, okay, you're giving the villain a run for their money, simply in the mind department. Like, you're not dumb. You can hold a conversation, you can hold an argument, you can make sure that we're with you till the very end. And that was shown from the very first line. It was so, like, if you can grasp someone's attention, like in literature, like when you're writing a book to an agent and all that, they said that, you have to grip their attention from the very first page, but they're just like, the very first line is where it's really at. I'm not shocked that Rick Riordan got picked up with this, because I said, yeah, I'm continuing. And I paced through it immediately. Like, it was so quick. Now with this book, I was so intrigued to see, like, okay, what really makes this book so special? And there were so many things that made it so special. Like, for one, the way that they incorporated so much Greek mythology. If you were a kid and you weren't really into classics, or like when they were teaching it in history class, or wherever you learned your classics, then all your teacher had to do was pick this up and give it to you, just to show you how interesting classics could be. Because I learned, obviously we grew up learning and watching from TV and movies a lot of Greek mythology and Roman mythology anyway. But I can imagine if you were like 12 and you were reading this book, you were learning so much about Greek and Roman mythology. Like they packed in so much about the gods and other creatures and other entities in Greek and Roman mythology. And I'm just there like, wow. Some things I already knew, but I'm still learning. And I love that. It made it so enjoyable. And also, this book is fast paced. It's so, so, so fast paced. It is absolutely amazing. As in, the main trio, if you know Percy Jackson, you know who that they are. That is Percy, Annabeth, and Grover. They go out on a quest, and it's trial after trial after trial after trial. I think they had about, I think, 7 trials in this book. And it was insane because I'm like, I love books obviously that are fast paced and where we get to see, the heroes, or we get to see the main character go through a lot, or we get to see a shift in action scenes and just everything that's going on, so we get to change environments, we get to see more characters, and we just get to go through like, rising and falling action speed and everything like that. But with this book, like, to go through so many trials in a single book was insane to me. But it did it so well because they got to one trial where they're trying to find a person, or they're trying to find an item. They, go through a bit of banter, they meet the villain of that trial. They have a quick, like, battle, they win or they lose something, or something happens, and they move along. They have a bit of a calm down, and then they go through their next trial. I think with other books, what other books are so used to doing is that you go through like one trial, or you have one event that happens, and you kind of just focus on that event. You kind of just own in on every single detail. But what's really funny about this is that it was actually very detailed. I knew the area that they were in. Obviously the context has already been laid, but I knew what everything looked like. I knew where everyone was positioned. I knew the stakes. I knew like what. Well, one good thing is that they were just traveling on, like, they had short time frames, so they were wearing the same thing. But I knew what the enemy was wearing, what the enemy looked like. So we still got very, like, fairly detailed descriptions, so we knew what everything was, what looked like, and everything was playing out in our heads. But at the same time, it's still like there was no time wasted with any like over extra explanations. So you got compact detail and great action, and we still managed to pack in the banter and the wit. It was just so, 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 so amazing. And I think what's really amazing about this book is that it is middle grade book. These are kids, okay? They're immature, and they're clumsy, and they're silly. And to actually get to go through this, like, adventure, this ridiculous adventure, might I add, with them is so fun. You have the immature comments, you have the just just silly things, arguing over things that don't matter, like having like wayward thoughts, like, but thoughts that a tween would have. And you just have this fun, uber fun experience with them, just going through all these trials. And because they're 12, there are, small things that, they just don't understand, like their own emotions, like, how do I feel about this, or how do I feel about this person? And that's another thing as well. And that's one of the reasons I've really, really been enjoying middle grade lately, is the fact that there is no unnecessary romance. Okay, I have nothing against romance. I am a hopeless romantic, surprise, surprise. But quite frankly, when I started reading like books from the romantic period, so Pride and Prejudice and Wuthering Heights, so like the classic romances. So I had like angsty romance where they didn't have unnecessary, immediate first look love, and if they had first look love, it was done tastefully, and you still have the angst of how they're going to get to each other, and the courtships and all that cute stuff that they did in that period. I grew up, well, I started reading with those romances. Romance nowadays in books, I find that especially in fantasy books, like in books where the primary genre isn't romance, I find that a lot of the romance included is unnecessary. I feel like it takes away from the plot a lot of the time. I'm like, if if you move the plot along, that's great. If you are an unnecessary addition to the plot, like, we're having a romantic crisis when the world is ending, I'm trying to pick between, whether or not I'm going to say yes to a potential lover in the middle of a war. Like, you see what I mean? I'm like, stop taking away from the plot. It becomes a subplot that I don't really find much intrigue in. Like, it's cute, and it ends up giving us a lot of, you know, yeah, a lot of, how do I say this? Let me just say it outright. Book boyfriends and book husbands that do not exist, and gives us like really, really high expectations for men that, quite frankly, a lot of times we will just not see come to pass. So maybe that is part of the reason I don't like romance in books, because they just give me these unrealistic expectations of men. But also, sometimes I just like the action. That being said, I've been reading a lot of romantasy as well, and it's kind of capturing me. So I know that is very, like, those were very conflicting statements. I don't want romance, but I'm loving romantasy. I know. But I am kind of a paradox. If we're being honest, I'm a living paradox in so many ways. Um, that aside, that is one thing I love about middle grade, is that there is no unnecessary focus on romance. If romance gets introduced, it's like, a small crush that develops into a sensible romance that does not take away from the plot. Because we have dragons to slay, okay, or Olympians to fight in in this situation. But yeah, there was no unnecessary romance, which I loved. I'm sorry to say, for all the romance buggies, I know you guys are going to hate me for saying that, but I stand by it. It was really great. And quite frankly, obviously this is the first book, and it was such a great intro. Like, obviously, when there is a series, we need to have a foundation that's built so that we can actually know what's going on as we go on for the rest of the series. And we also need it to grasp us, so we want to come back. This was amazing. They built the slightest of foundations, as in the slightest of foundations. They explained to us why there are Greek gods in the real world, and the fact that they really exist, and that there are demigods. Like, what is it, how is it working in the actual real world in the 21st century. And also a bit of how their powers work, how the system with, the demigods and the Greek gods, how that works, and how the system of magic and monsters work. And they kind of build on as we go along. But there is still so much history that we need to know. And not just history that you can learn in books, but history that is strict to the books, because obviously they add their own history, because this is a fantasy retelling. Like, this is not going to be fully accurate. And so there's so much more history to learn of, what happened in the Greek world, and also the history of the characters as well. And so it was great foundation that wanted you to come back for more. They gave you a taster so that you don't leave saying, I already know everything, there's no need for me to continue. Like, they literally just give you a taste, because I just wanted to know more of that world. I wanted to know more about Camp Half Blood. I wanted to know more about the different cabins and the people who were in it, and like their stories and their histories and what they've been through and how everything has come to be. It was amazing. And that's another thing, the characters here, all the characters, even though this book is told strictly from Percy's perspective. So we don't have, like, an Annabeth chapter and a Grover chapter. No, it's strictly from Percy's perspective, and anything they say is really just Percy, saying what they said. So from that sense, we don't really get a direct perspective from the other characters, but the other characters still have their own voice. It was still very distinct, their own voice, their own personalities, their own hopes and dreams, and opinions that are just clearly set. And when it's a first person book, we have to make sure that that's clear. We need to know that if I'm reading a line, I know that that sounds like Annabeth. That's something that Annabeth would say, something that Percy would say, something that Grover would say, something that Chiron would say. Like, every character had their distinct voice, and so it's so well written in that sense. Guys, everything about this book was amazing. And so for those of you who think you might have missed out on reading Percy Jackson, you didn't read it when you were a tween or a teen like me, you didn't read it. It doesn't matter. This book is for everyone. I'm telling you this now. It doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter what age you're getting into it. You will get into it. If you like fantasy, you will get into it. It does not matter. This book is for everyone, and I encourage you to pick it up. Like I said at the beginning of this video, this will become a Percy Stan account. Okay, Percy Jackson, I love you, and I explained this on my TikTok. I had so much trouble reading and completing the last book simply because I couldn't let go of the characters. I know that the Olympian universe is very, very vast, and Rick Riordan doesn't seem like he's stopping anytime soon, but that is amazing. But the original trio, I fall in love with them, and I know that the other books focus on other characters and like past, present, future. Like it focuses on so much, so we get a very, very vast exploration of the universe through other perspectives. But I love my original trio, and so I didn't really want to say goodbye to them yet. I know that they come back and that they have they have other books where they start in, but it's not simply them. But I will say, not from this book directly, but there are other characters that made an appearance in the series later on that I have fallen in love with just from their short appearance. And I do know that they have their books in like the whole Percy Jackson universe. So those books I am excited to read, but still, I didn't want to say goodbye to their characters, but knowing that they are still going to be there, they are going to still have a starring role in some way or form, does still excite me. But guys, read the Percy Jackson series. If you are a fantasy fan, you cannot claim that until you've read this series. It's a staple. It's a staple, and I don't think you will regret it at all. Believe me, these books are worth it. Exactly what people say. They are absolutely worth it. No questions asked. I will definitely be making more and more videos about Percy Jackson and the entire series as I read through them as I go along. It will be from comparing, the books to the movies, and I definitely have comments about that. And also to the show that's going to be made, or that has been made but just hasn't been released. Like, there's so much to speak about when it comes to Percy Jackson, and believe me, we're going to have so much fun. So welcome to a Percy Jackson Stan account. But yeah, guys, those are just my initial thoughts on Percy Jackson and my very first intro to it, like the very intro, the first book. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you've read Percy Jackson yet, if you read it when you were younger or when you were a bit older like me. If you do plan to read it, and like I said, you definitely should. And what else you want me to discuss when it comes to all things Percy Jackson. Yeah, so I hope to see you guys soon. Again, my name is Shelly. I'm a lover of books, mainly all things fantasy. And it's been fun. It's been great fun. And hope to see you very, very soon. So make sure to like, comment, share, and of course, if you haven't already, subscribe. But until next time.